Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to stick to Sweden and we're going to return to a brewery that's featured on the channel many times before. I've had some really nice beers from these guys over the last couple of years. They are still a relatively new addition to the Swedish beer scene, but I think it is most definitely fair to say that this brewery are best known for their different kinds of New England hazy, whatever you want to call them, IPAs. In recent times though, they have been diversifying a little bit and trying a few different lagers, and the beer that we're going to have a look at today is a style that we haven't tried from them before. It's a style though that I enjoy very much, and one that we don't get to review all that often on the channel either actually. So needless to say, I'm really curious to see what this one is going to have in store for us. Hopefully it's another good beer. Hopefully it makes for an interesting review, and as always, I hope that you guys enjoy my take on this one as well. So yeah, for this review then, we are going to head to Örebro, which is out to the west of Stockholm, and we're going to have a look at another beer from the wonderful Apex Brewing Company. So this beer is the latest instalment from their Keller Lager series. This one is called the Keller Dunkel. I think you can tell from the name what style of beer this one is, but it comes in at 5% ABV, and this was released as part of the Lokalt Småskaligt assortment through Systembolaget in Sweden for December of 2022. So yeah, this should be really quite interesting. As you'll know if you've watched the channel, Keller beers tend to be more kind of yeasty and unfiltered and things, usually a little bit stronger in alcohol as well. But as you'll know, I'm a huge fan of the more malty styles of beer, especially the malty lagers like the Dunkel, the Doppelbock, the Märzens, the Vienna lagers, stuff like this. So when I saw that Apex were releasing a Keller Dunkel, I thought this would be a really interesting one for us to take a look at. So yeah, let's crack on then and see what this beer is going to have in store for us. So as always with my reviews, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting though, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Apex Brewing Company before, and we will no doubt add more to that list in the near future. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The support that you give is massively appreciated, and remember you can go into the channel homepage and search for beer based on the geography tagging system. Just go to the search bar, type in your hometown, state, county, prefecture, whatever you like, and if I've reviewed beers from your local area, they should pop up. Otherwise, you can check out the playlist of beers from different countries. You'll find this one in the Swedish playlist along with many other things. And yeah, we will be adding to that list over the next wee while, I'm sure. But let's go on to my brewery notes then, and I'll tell you once again about Apex Brewing Company. So, Apex Brewing Company, as I've told you before, were originally based in Nora, which is to the north of Örebro, and Örebro can be found out to the west of Stockholm, but this company was founded back in 2017 by Daniel Gatchitz and Niklas Lundgren. So both of these guys are musicians. Niklas played in the band 59 Times the Pain, whereas Daniel played in The Voice of a Generation, but they together are responsible for the brewing operations, but there are a few others involved in the company as well. This is Leif Carlson, Ola Eriksson and Roger Hjelm, and they take care of all the various aspects of the business side of things. But they started off originally with a 500 litre brew kit and 6 fermentation tanks, and they were just selling their beers in the local area before they got them into Systembolaget. If I remember correctly, I reviewed one of their beers first back in 2018 or so. That was the Citra, or the single hop IPA as it was called, which was a Citra hop IPA, and that was where they really started to make their name because they got recognised over the whole of Sweden. But yeah, since then, they've gone on to become very decorated. But in 2018, they brewed around 35,000 litres of beer with about 25 different varieties, all of which were different kinds of IPAs. But then they expanded a little bit, and over 2019, they brewed 120,000 litres. Over the following years, they continued to expand. They started exporting their beers, they built up their brewery capacity, and got their name out there a little bit more, and things went very well for them. But in the summer of 2021, they announced that they would move to a new premises in the Baytorp district of Örebro in the autumn. They've now moved there, and at this point they upgraded their 500 litre brew kit to a 2,000 litre brewing system. They added several new tanks, and this of course has allowed them to export their beer a lot more widely, and so Apex Brewing are doing a lot of different things. They added some lager tanks into the brewery as well, and this has allowed them to kind of experiment with Keller lagers and stuff like that. We've had the Keller Pilsner, the Keller Märzen, now we've got the Keller Dunkel, and we are expecting the Schwarzbier very soon. So yeah, Apex are starting to try a few different styles. I would still love to see them try an old school West Coast IPA at some point. But as I said to you, over the years, this brewery have built a very strong reputation for themselves when it comes to the New England hazy, whatever you want to call them, IPAs. Their lager beers are going down very well as well. And as of December 2022, when I'm filming this particular review for you, they've produced 125 different kinds of beer, and there will no doubt be more at some point in the near future as well. But yeah, that is all I can really tell you about Apex Brewing Company for the moment. If you want to learn more about these guys, you can of course check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can check out the Untappd page to learn more about all the different beers that these guys have done. But yeah, as I say, really interesting brewery. This one did a lot to promote the New England IPA style in Sweden, and they are starting to diversify a little bit with different styles at the moment. So definitely worth keeping an eye on them over the next wee while. But yeah, let's get on and actually have a little look at this particular beer itself. So as you can see, this is another 440 milliliter can. The artwork on this one is a little bit different to what you would see normally with Apex, but quite similar to the other beers we've seen in the kind of Keller lager range, just a different colour. I think I forget what colour the Märzen was, but there was a blue one in this range too, but you can see we've got a nice kind of green and purple colour scheme with this one. But there you can see one of Apex's common slogans, music, people and beer, obviously a reference to Daniel and Nicholas's musical background. But yeah, plain silver top on the can there, as I said earlier, 440 millilitres. This one 5% ABV. I can't actually remember how much this one cost me. I want to say it was maybe about 35 Swedish kroner, so that's about €3.50, £3 sterling, maybe in the region of $4 American. But yeah, a 5% Dunkel lager beer, this one 440 millilitres. You can't really go wrong for that, I have to say. But like I said earlier, this beer was released as part of the Lokal Småskaligt assortment through Systembolaget for December of 2022, and no doubt it will be released at some point later. Again, I've seen one or two of these beers being re-released through the locals as well, but this was the new one that we hadn't tried before. So yeah, a 5% Keller Dunkel beer. Let's get this guy out and we'll get on with the tasting then. So yeah, as you guys watching the videos will probably know, the definition of a lager is a beer that uses a bottom fermenting yeast. That means it ferments at lower temperatures in comparison with ale yeast, which is top fermenting. They ferment between, sort of 15 to 18 degrees Celsius. Lager beers tend to ferment between 8 to 12 degrees Celsius. So yeah, that is the major difference. And Keller beers, of course, tend to be a little bit stronger in ABV, usually a little bit more malty as well, and a lot of that kind of comes from the yeast. You get a lot more yeasty and big character from these. So yeah, it goes together quite nicely. As I said earlier, I don't think I've ever had a beer that has been specifically called a Keller Dunkel. We have had many Dunkels on the channel before. Dunkel, of course, is the German word for dark, and it basically means a dark lager, or a more, in more broad terms, we can say a sort of mahogany chestnutty coloured lager beer. But when we've poured this one out, it's poured with about a half finger of a frothy, I would say kind of fawn or ivory coloured head. A few kind of medium size bubbles in there. I don't know how well you guys can see that, but it does look very, very nice. That head is of course fading away to just be a very thin foamy layer, but you've got that ring around the edge of the glass. As I said earlier, this beer is unfiltered. I don't know if we pour the rest of it into the glass, we might get a little bit more haziness and things out of it, but this beer is actually pretty clear. One or two big bubbles sticking toward the side of the glass, a few little ones going up toward the bottom of the head there, but overall it does look pretty nice, I have to say. Yeah, so in terms of the colour of this one, I would describe it as a very kind of rich stained mahogany. Maybe a chestnut colour is a good way to describe it. But remember, the colour of your beer depends on 1, the type of malts that you use. This goes a long way to determining your EBC rating. 2, length of your wort boil is also going to play a role, because the longer you boil the wort, the more the sugars caramelise, and thus you get a darker colour of beer. But any barrel aging that you do, or any adjuncts that you put in, will affect the colour of the beer too. But yeah, you don't normally have to care about adjuncts and barrel aging and things when it comes to Dunkel lager beers. But yeah, certainly a lot clearer than I thought it was going to be. It does have a wee hint of a kind of natural haze to it, but you guys can see there, this beer is you know, pretty damn clear. It doesn't look madly hazy, which we've seen. You know, it's a little bit less hazy than some Keller beers that we've seen in the past. So yeah, not much in the way of visible carbonation in this one. I think we should just take a wee look at the aroma and see what this beer is going to have in store for us. I love the aroma of a good Dunkel beer, so hopefully Apex has done another good job with this one, as they did with the other Keller beers. Oh yeah, that is damn nice. Yeah, what I'll say about this one straight away is that it doesn't do anything surprising when you consider what style this beer is. It gives you everything you would want, and you can't knock the beer in that regard. And for me, when it comes to talking about these, when it comes to talking about these lager styles, what you want is one that is true to what you would find in Germany or the Czech Republic. Of course, in Germany, this beer style would be called a Dunkel. In the Czech Republic, it would be called a Czerny. So yeah. But yeah, this one for me kind of gives you, just from the aroma, it gives you everything you would want from the style. You've got a little bit of dryness to it, you've got a bit of sweetness and a bit of toastiness, a little touch of red fruit, and you've got that little bit of smooth kind of hoppy character. But to me, it smells more like a German Dunkel rather than the Czech Czerny. The main difference for me between the Czech lagers and the German ones would be that the Czech ones are a bit more yeasty and bready, whereas the German ones are a little bit more kind of clean and crisp, if you like. This one, it does have a few Czech elements to it, but more German, I would say. It really leans more toward that German side of things. And that makes sense, especially when they're calling it a Keller Dunkel, the specific use of the German language. But yeah, aroma-wise, it is pretty authentic, and it does smell pretty nice. So yeah, let's try and break this down though and describe it for you a wee bit more in depth. So the backbone of this beer, absolutely, you've got a little bit of that kind of straight up rye bread crust in there. So yeah, lovely straight up rye bread crust. That's forming the backbone of the beer. Within that, you've got a little bit of woodiness and you've got a little bit of nuttiness. So yeah, the nuttiness I would say really takes a back seat, but yeah, bread, as I say, slightly toasty rye bread crust in there, little touch of woodiness, and then a sweet rye bread sitting on top of it. Above that, you've got a little bit of wholemeal brown bread as well. I do get a little touch of like a white bread, but I would say that takes a bit of a back seat to other things that are going on in the aroma here. So yeah, bread crust, wood, rye bread, wholemeal brown bread, a little bit of white bread, and then above that, you start to get the kind of brown sugary notes out of the beer. So for me, the brown sugary character in this one is quite leathery. You've got this lovely, smooth, kind of leathery character to this one. Normally, when you have a beer like this, a leathery character to the brown sugars indicates a longer wort boil. So yeah, you do get a little bit of that out of this one, but you've got that lovely leathery character to it. There's a little bit of toastiness in there. Yeah, definitely a little bit of leatheriness, a little bit of toastiness. You've also got, this beer isn't like it's interesting because the caramelly notes that you get out of this beer are definitely more toasty and roasted, but you do get a little element of a McVitie's digestive biscuit character to this one. The brown sugar in this beer is not overly bright and it's not overly sweet. So that's absolutely worth bearing in mind with this one. This Dunkel really has more of a smooth, leathery, toasty and bready kind of character to it. So I do quite like how that, as I say, I do quite like how all that pieces together in this beer. Yeah. Aroma-wise, this really is pretty nice. It kind of is very much like a Munich Dunkel. It actually reminds me quite a little bit of Augustiner, the Augustiner Dunkel, this one. It has a lot of the same elements to the aroma. It's got the bit of leatheriness, it's got the brown bready notes, and yeah, just a little bit of dryness. So yeah, as I say, a bit of leathery brown sugar, a bit of toasty brown sugar in there, tiny bit of the sweet caramel, but also a good little bit of McVitie's digestive biscuit, but that all sits on top of this big bready character that the beer has. As I say, little touch of white bread, wholemeal bread, but mainly like a big sweet German rye bread. I miss the German rye bread that we used to get from the bakeries in Heidelberg. That was awesome. Yeah, aroma wise, this beer is pretty damn nice. So I think we've said everything we need to about the malty and yeasty side of this beer. You do get a little bit of that farmhousey, fresh brown wholemeal bread character out of the beer, a little bit cracker, a little bit honeycomb and stuff in it. But yeah, I'm sure we'll get more of those kind of notes coming out when we actually taste the thing. I think we'll get more of that from the flavour. But let's go on to the hoppy side of the beer. Yeah. Green component of this one then. You've got a lovely little bit of smooth earthiness in there. So yeah, smooth earthiness to the beer. A little bit of herbal character as well. These are things that you would typically expect of the this of the German Dunkel style. So yeah, lovely smooth, typical German noble earthiness. And there a little touch of herbal character, a little bit of floral aromaticity as well. But then the green component for me leans mainly toward a more grassy character. So yeah, the grassy side that comes out of this beer is quite interesting. So yeah, a little bit of bright grassiness, a little bit of smooth floral character, but then yeah, the way everything goes together in that regard is pretty nice. On the fruity side of things, this beer is not madly fruity actually. There's a little bit of red fruity character. I mean, you do get a little bit of black currant and a little bit of a kind of dry figgy note to it. But maybe just a little touch of sultana as well and a bit of oily pear. So yeah, oily pear, sultana, little touch of fig. As I say, a little touch of black currant as well. This is quite an interesting aroma, this one. It gives you, as I say, everything you would expect from a Munich Dunkel. But yeah, it's definitely got that more kind of clean aspect to it. So it's definitely more of a German Dunkel than it is a Czech Tmavi. And I wondered when it was a Keller Dunkel, I thought, you know, maybe we'll get a little bit more Czech character out of it. But there's nothing to fault the beer in that regard. You know, if it's going to be a Munich Dunkel, this is a style that I do very much enjoy. So I would look forward to that. So yeah, I think we can leave it at that for the aroma. But as I always say, take a wee bit of time to enjoy the aroma of the beer before you get stuck in. But I think we should have a taste of this one and see what it's all about. So this is the Keller Dunkel, 5% Dunkel lager beer from Apex Brewing Company in Örebro, out to the west of Stockholm here in Sweden. Let's look at this. Slange, skål, cheers. Yeah, I'm going to say straight away, very easy drinking beer, which is of course what you expect from a lager, but it has all the flavour aspects you would expect of this style. So as I said earlier, you rate these beers in terms of how close they are to the traditional examples of the style, and you certainly can't knock this one. It has everything you would want from a Munich Dunkel. The only difference I would say between the German brewed ones and this is that this beer has that typical kind of Nordic cleanliness to the mouthfeel. You really do get that big. This beer, as I say, you get a lot of the flavour in the aftertaste with this one, but in the beginning, you know, the flavour, the beer is just really, really clean. So yeah, you have to bear that in mind with this beer. It's a very, very clean Dunkel lager, this one, just because of how pure this, pardon me, the Nordic water is. But it's good. It is good. Don't sort of hold that against the beer, if that makes sense. Very good beer and very authentic in terms of its flavour profile, just a bit cleaner and a bit lighter than you might expect from what you'd find in Munich itself. And you can, in fairness, they're calling this one a Keller Dunkel. So you can feel that this beer is, it does have that little bit more bready and yeasty character to it as well, which I would associate with the Keller beer. So yeah, that's interesting in itself. That is also interesting in itself. So yeah, I'm just thinking, where do we start with this beer? So let's focus on the middle third of the palate then, as we always do. So the backbone of this beer, you've got a lovely little bit of kind of fresh, kind of rye bready bread crust there. You can feel it's a little bit toasty, it's a little bit grainy, but yeah, you've definitely got this kind of bread crusty backbone to it. As you move toward the front of that middle third of your palate, you've got a little bit of, you do have a little bit more of a, you've got a little bit more of a kind of woody character of this beer. There's a few little nutty elements to it as well. So yeah, nice kind of woody, nutty character to this one, mixed in with the bread crust. But then above that, you get this bready, you get this kind of rye bready layer coming out of it, which is, again, really, the rye bready notes you get in this one, it's a little bit sweet, but it's also got a little bit of dryness to it. So yeah, the bread crust with the little woody, nutty character there, and the rye bread sitting on top of it. But then above that layer, you get a kind of wholemeal, like a kind of thinner wholemeal brown bready character as well. So yeah, there's a sort of wholemeal brown bready layer there. Then you've got the white bready character above it as well. So brighter white bready note. Then above all of that, you start to get the kind of brown sugary notes out of this one. And the brown sugars are a little bit layered. So you can feel there's a leathery, yeah, there's a sort of leathery brown sugary layer to the beer for sure. And then above that, in the dead centre of your palate, you've got a little bit of a kind of straight up, kind of sweet, you've got a little bit of a sweet caramelly note in there. But then as you move further out from that, it's got a little bit more toastiness to it. You've got a mix of a leathery brown sugary layer and a toasty brown sugary layer, and that more oily sweet caramel playing out too. So yeah, there are a few interesting aspects of this one. Dead centre palate, as I say, sweet caramel, little tiny touch of Werther's original butter candy character in this one as well. But then yeah, as you move further out from it, more toasty, brown sugar, and then the leathery note underneath. I think that covers the middle third of your palate in this beer quite well. The bread crust, the bit of woodiness and nuttiness, the rye bread, the wholemeal bread, the white bread, then the brown sugary layer. The further you go into the aftertaste with this one, you can feel the bread crust there, you get a bit of the woodiness and things, and all the different bready layers, and then yeah, the brown sugary notes go there. But the yeasty character in this beer, with it being a Keller Dunkel, for me, Keller beers are always that little bit more yeasty. The back third of your palate actually has a bit more of a role to play in the flavour of the beer. So let's move on and look at that now. So the border region between middle and back third of your palate, you get a little bit of that bready build up in there, and it's like quite a sweet rye bread, but at the same time there's a mix of this kind of white bready character in there and the kind of yeastiness. So the base of the back third of your palate with this beer, really dry, really dry bread crusty backbone. There's a bit of a cracker, like a Jacob's cream cracker dryness on top of that. Then you've got the rye bready flavours, which are a lot lighter and a bit more airy. Then you get the wholemeal brown bready layer on top of that, and then you get this white bready kind of yeasty layer in there as well. It's almost very slightly sort of cardboardy. You almost get that kind of flavour out of it. So you've got this really layered back third of your palate, and it's the kind of white bready notes that give this beer, it's the yeast I think that's giving you these very white bready notes out of this one. So yeah, that back third of your palate though, these bready layers I've talked about are all taller and more airy, and they all go together like really nicely in that perspective. But yeah, above all of that, you've got this really airy you do have this really kind of airy, like farmhousey bread. You know, it's like a sweet wholemeal bread, but as I say, a little bit honeycomb character to it, a little bit of woodiness and things in there. But yeah, I think the way that that goes together is really quite nice as well. So yeah, the different bready layers in that back third of your palate are really quite nice, but as I say, taller, more airy, and it's that back third of your palate that really makes this beer a Keller Dunkel rather than just a straight up Dunkel. This beer, if it was just a regular Dunkel, it wouldn't be anywhere near as yeasty as it was, and the brown sugars I think would be a bit brighter and more oily and straight up caramelly. But yeah, back third of your palate, you can feel the flavour is taller, and as you come further forward, it just kind of squashes together and condenses that a little bit more. But yeah, the malty yeasty side of this beer is really nicely done. Let's focus on the hoppy side of things then. So back corners of the palate first. So yeah, back corners of the palate, you've got a nice little bit of earthiness in there, smooth earthiness, which would be expected of German Hallertau or Tettnanger hops, which I'm pretty sure have been used in this beer. Bit hard to distinguish exactly which though. But yeah, a little bit of smooth earthiness, and as you move further forward, it's a little touch herbal, and as you push toward the kind of front corners of the palate, it's a little bit more sort of floral and aromatic. But the floral character in this one is quite smooth, but still bright. Round the front curve of the tongue though, it's a little bit lighter and more grassy, I would say, and there's a little touch of zestiness within this beer as well. So yeah, the grassy component in this one is really quite it's quite nice and quite wet, I would say. So yeah, green component in this beer for me is really it's really nicely done, but it's definitely like smooth but still bright German noble hops for me. I think that covers it, and that is quite in keeping with the smoothness overall that this beer has. Let's focus on the front third of your palate and the kind of fruity side of things then. So the border region between front third and middle third of your palate, again, you get a little bit of a kind of bright brown bready build up, and there's sort of wholemeal brown bread, but a mix of a rye bread, a little bit of bread crust, a little bit of wood, and on top of that you've got that nice oily bubble coming out of the beer where the juicy fruity esters just roll their way out. So yeah, the fruity side of this beer though is kind of interesting. One of the main areas where this beer diverges from the aroma is the fact that the fruits in this beer are a lot drier, if that makes sense. So yeah, that's kind of interesting. So let's kind of focus on that a wee bit. We'll take the back of that front third of your palate first. So when you take the beer in, you do get a little bit of sharper red fruity character coming out of this beer when you take it in. So on the back of that front half of your palate, there's a little bit of a, yeah, on the back of that front half of your palate, you get, or the front third of your palate I should say, your brain is not working, you get a little touch of red fruity character in there. So it's a little bit datey, but then underneath you've got that kind of dry sultana, you know, dry white green grapey character there. So that's what forms on the back of that front third of your palate. But as you move further forward, you start to get a little bit more, there's a little tiny touch of a dry figgy character to it. But as you move into the front half of the front third of your palate, you get a bit of that dry black curranty note, and above that there's going to be just a little touch of blackberry. But yeah, the fruity character in this one for me, it's dates, it's sultanas, there's a bit of oily pear in there, there's a little bit of yeah, there's a little bit of oily pear. There's also a little bit of blackcurrant and a little bit of blackberry as well. So yeah, the way that this beer goes about its business, I think, is really nice from that side of things. So yeah, the fruity flavour of this one is really nice. I do like how this goes together. Yeah, the dry fruity flavours of this one are kind of in keeping with the more kind of yeasty character that the beer has, and also the smoothness of the hops. So I really do like how this beer goes about its business. So it gets a big thumbs up from me. Yeah, so I think that's everything we really need to say about the flavour profile of this one. We can round off with a wee look at the mouthfeel. So like I said earlier, this beer, it's quite light-bodied. I would say it's at the top end of light-bodied. The carbonation is quite smooth, but it's very clean in its mouthfeel, I would say mainly because of the Nordic water. So yeah, nice little bit of cleanliness because of the Nordic water. In terms of the IBUs, this beer really isn't that bitter at all. 15 or 20, probably 20 IBUs seems a bit appropriate for this one, but there's a good little bit of grainy dryness to it, which you could interpret as bitterness, so that's fair. The malt base, bit dry, bit grainy, a little bit smooth and sweet on top of that, but then you've also got these nice kind of fruity characters coming out of it as well, but mostly the fruity character in this one, it's a mix of oily and a kind of dry fruity note that you get out of this beer. But overall, I would say this is a really quite interesting Dunkel beer. Very close to a Munich Dunkel, but a bit cleaner in its mouthfeel and obviously a bit more yeasty character, which is why they've called it a Keller Dunkel. So yeah, I'd love to learn about the process that Apex are actually using for these beers. But yeah, no, I need to get up to Örebro and visit these guys along with Mooley's as well and see what's going on up there. But overall, a really interesting beer, this one. I don't get to review all that many Dunkels on the channel. I have enjoyed this one, and I'm going to enjoy finishing off this beer. So yeah, thumbs up to Apex Brewing Company for doing this and for doing something a little bit different actually. A wee bit different from what you might expect. I mean, for me, the benchmark of Dunkel Lager would probably be the Augustiner Dunkel. That's one of the ones that I tried and really, really loved. Voice is starting to go a little bit now. But yeah, another very, very solid beer from Apex Brewing. And I look forward to trying the Schwarz beer next month, which I've seen. It's already been released on Glasblanket, but Systembolaget will take a little bit longer. So yeah, let's leave it at that for this one. This was the Keller Dunkel at 5% ABV from Apex Brewing Company in Örebro, out to the west of Stockholm here in Sweden. So yeah, thank you again for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comments section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Apex Brewing Company as well. And we will no doubt return to these guys at some point in the very near future. But until the next time, Slange, Skull, cheers, check out my social media, check out Apex social media, and I'll see you guys in the next review. Slange, Skull, cheers. Have a go at any Dunkel beers you find and give me some Dunkel recommendations. Slange just now.